The woman who had just won Sao Paulo's most prestigious business award was standing in the rain outside a hospital, and the man dying inside it was the one person she had never mentioned in any speech, any interview, or any version of the story she told about herself. She had been standing there for 20 minutes. She had not gone in. Her name was Camila Souza, 43 years old, owner of Souza Cosmetics, stocked in every major pharmacy chain across Brazil, featured in Veja magazine twice, and described in every profile ever written about her exactly the way she had described herself, a woman who built something from nothing, alone. The glass trophy was still in the back seat, wrapped in velvet. The speech she had given 2 hours ago was already being shared online. Hard work, resilience, vision. None of those words mentioned Rafael. She got back in the car. She drove home, and somewhere in the fluorescent corridors of Hospital das Clínicas, the man who had once made a single phone call that redirected the entire course of her life did not know she had been outside at all. Camila had grown up in Osasco, on the west edge of Sao Paulo, in a house where the walls sweated in summer and the pipes groaned in winter. Her mother sold avocados from a cart. Her father drove a delivery truck until his knees gave out. There was no inheritance, no connection, only one thing her mother had taught her that stuck: watch what people need before they know they need it. At 26, she had started mixing hair treatments in her kitchen, formulas for the coarse, dry, chemically damaged hair the mainstream brands had never bothered with. She sold them at the weekend market in Osasco, then at fairs, then through a website a cousin's boyfriend built for 500 reais. The work was real, the struggle was real, but the story she later told about it, that part had a gap in it. There was a notebook, blue cover, spiral-bound, water-stained at one corner. She had carried it through every workspace she'd ever rented. She had not seen it in years. She had no idea where it was. By 32, Souza Cosmetics had outgrown its second address. She had 3 employees, a small regional prize, and a list of 12 retail chains she had contacted personally. 11 had ignored her. The 12th sent a rejection letter with her name misspelled. She kept going. She reformulated. She repackaged. She paid a distributor who overcharged her and absorbed the loss. Her 2 closest rivals, women who had started similar brands the same year, were taking investor money and were now being stocked in shopping malls, while Camila was still cold calling from a desk she had bought secondhand. She did not resent them. She just noticed how fast doors opened for money, and how rarely that had anything to do with what was inside the bottle. Then, at 34, everything broke at once. A key supplier tripled his prices overnight. A distributor pulled out without notice. Camila sat at her kitchen table at midnight with her accounts in front of her and did the calculation she had been avoiding for weeks. 4 months, that was what she had left. She did not cry. She made a list, and near the bottom, below every option she had already discarded, was a name she had almost not written down: Rafael Moreira. She had not spoken to Rafael in 5 years. He had been her first serious stockist, a man who ran a small chain of beauty supply shops in the ABC Paulista region, who had taken her products before anyone else would, paid every invoice on time, and never once asked her to change her formula. She had fallen out over an exclusivity dispute. She had later admitted, privately, to herself only, that she had handled badly. She had not called to apologize, neither had he. She dialed his number at 11 p.m. He answered on the second ring. She had called him only because she needed something. She knew it while the phone was ringing. She told herself that was just how business worked, but there was a discomfort in her chest as she listened to his voice, unhurried, without coldness, that she did not examine too carefully. He did not say, "I told you so." He did not mention the exclusivity dispute. He asked 2 questions, was quiet for a moment, and said he knew someone. The someone was a logistics director named Edilson in a national distribution group that had spent the last 18 months quietly looking for exactly the kind of authentic, specialty hair brand that the mass market hadn't yet swallowed. Rafael had met Edilson once at a trade fair in Guarulhos 2 years earlier. He had kept the card in a drawer. 1 phone call, that was all he made. He did not ask for anything in return. He did not position himself as a partner. He said, "Let me know how it goes." Then he went back to his own shops, his own work, in the cities south of São Paulo that no magazine profile would ever mention. The conversation with Edilson lasted 40 minutes. The contract offer came 6 weeks later. Souza Cosmetics entered national distribution, and Camila Souza, in the first interview she gave afterward and in every one that followed, described that moment as the result of her persistence and the quality of her product. She mentioned Edilson once, briefly, in an early piece that not many people read. She mentioned Rafael never. Not in the Veja profile, not in the award speech, not in the FGV Business School talk that had been watched 400,000 times and shared by people who called her an inspiration. Not once in 10 years. If something in you just shifted, if you felt a quiet discomfort land somewhere you didn't expect, stay with this story, because what Rafael did with that silence is the part that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Rafael had never asked for credit. It was not a discipline he had developed. It was simply the way he was built. He had grown up in San Bernardo do Campo, the son of a factory worker who spent 30 years on an auto plant floor and retired with bad lungs and a handshake. He believed, in a way that needed no words, that you did good work, stayed honest, and let the outcome take care of itself. He was not a saint. He had a temper when suppliers were dishonest. He had once refused to speak to a competitor for 2 years over a pricing dispute he had later admitted he'd escalated unnecessarily. He was stubborn on systems, slow to apologize, and occasionally wrong about things he was certain he was right about. But on the things that mattered, on whether a person deserved a second chance, on whether a favor needed to be repaid, he was quietly, immovably correct. He had watched Souza Cosmetics grow into something remarkable. He had stocked her products until the national deal changed the price point and his margins disappeared. He had told his customers, the women who had found the brand through him, what Camila had built. He had felt something like pride in it. He had never mentioned the phone call. The diagnosis had come 14 months earlier, pancreatic, the kind that does not wait. His wife, Beatriz, had told almost no one. Rafael had insisted. He did not want people arriving out of obligation. He had spent his life building relationships through presence, not through pity, and he was not going to change that now. Camila had heard the news 3 weeks before the award ceremony. A mutual contact from an old trade association had sent a message, just 3 lines. "Rafael in the hospital. Doesn't look good. Thought you should know." She read it twice, then she put her phone face down on her desk and went back to the press release her team was finalizing for the award announcement. She told herself she would deal with it after the ceremony, after the press cycle settled, after she had a moment to think about what she would even say. The ceremony came. She gave the speech. She thanked everyone she could think of, her team, her suppliers, her early customers. She had not said his name. And that night, in the rain, she sat in the car outside the hospital for 20 minutes and drove home. By the time she got home, she had convinced herself she had done the right thing. She barely knew him anymore. It had been years. She would send flowers. She would have her assistant find the right address. She did not send flowers. She told herself she was too busy, and she was, but that was not the reason. The reason was simpler and harder to look at.
Going to that hospital meant acknowledging something she had spent 10 years arranging her story to avoid. The blue notebook arrived 11 days later. Padded envelope, San Bernardo do Campo return address. Inside the notebook, her handwriting on the cover, product development, year 1. There was a note from Beatriz, 3 sentences. Rafael kept this. He found it in a box of returned stock from the Lapa address, years ago. He always said it was yours to have when the time was right. Camila opened it. The first pages were formulas, Shea percentages, pH notes, her younger handwriting, faster, less careful. But between the technical entries were other things, fears, observations, a running record of who had
Helped her and how, written in the same matter-of-fact way she had once tracked inventory. On page 23, in the week she had nearly lost everything, she had written, Rafael answered, didn't lecture, just said he knew someone. I don't know why that surprised me. He's always been like that. If this works, when this works, I need to remember where it started. She read it twice. Then she put on her coat and drove back to Hospital das Clínicas. She did not rehearse what she would say. She did not ask her assistant to call ahead. She parked in the same spot she had parked in 11 days ago and walked through the doors she had not walked through before. Rafael was awake, thinner than she remembered. Illness had made him look both older and somehow more essential, as if everything unnecessary had already been removed. Beatriz was in the chair beside him. She looked at Camila when she entered and said nothing. She simply moved the chair slightly to make room. Camila sat down. She said, I left your name out for 10 years. I'm sorry. Rafael looked at her for a long moment. He said, I know, it's all right. She said, it isn't. He was quiet. Then, it hurt for a while. I won't pretend it didn't. But you built something real, Camila. Whatever I did, that was always going to be yours. She stayed for 2 hours. She did not fix anything. She could not. But she sat beside a man who had helped her without condition, and she gave him the only thing she still had available to give, her presence and the truth. There is a person somewhere in this story who knows someone like Rafael. Someone who made a call, or opened a door, or stayed quiet at the right moment, and whose name never made it into the official version. If a face just came to mind, this story is not finished with you yet. Rafael Moreira died on a Tuesday morning in April, with Beatriz and his 2 sons beside him. Camila was not there. She had said her goodbye. She had sat in that chair and been honest, and he had accepted it with a grace she understood. Afterward, driving home through the city, had never been something he had learned. It had always been in him. She had just never looked directly at it. She attended the funeral in São Bernardo do Campo, small service. The women in the pews were not business contacts. They were neighbors, longtime customers, friends from childhood. Several of them had no idea who she was. Afterward, Beatriz introduced her to Rafael's son, Guilherme, 22 years old, running the Diadema shop he had never planned to run, managing it with a precision he had clearly inherited without recognizing it. Beatriz said, he has his father's gift for listening. Camila gave her number. She said anything, distribution questions, supplier problems, someone to think out loud with, call me. I owe your father more than I ever said while I still could. Guilherme looked at her without the weight she expected. He said, he talked about you sometimes. He was always proud of what you built. She drove home through Osasco, past the roads her father had driven, past markets like the one her mother had worked, past the kind of city that produces both the people who forget and the people who remember without needing to be remembered. The blue notebook was on the passenger seat. She had not planned to bring it, but there it was. A month later, Camila's team sent her a speaking request, a prestigious slot at a business conference in Sao Paulo, the kind of room that would add to the official version of her story, the kind of audience that would share clips. She turned it down. Instead, she called the community center in Osasco where she had sold her first products and asked if they still hosted local business talks. They did. The next available slot had 60 seats. She almost canceled the night before. She sat at the kitchen table where she had once done the calculations that told her she had 4 months left, and she asked herself what she was actually going to say. It was one thing to be honest in a hospital room. It was another to be honest in front of a room of people who believed the version she had been selling for a decade. She went anyway. She talked about building something from nothing, the real version. She named every person she remembered. She described the exclusivity dispute she had mishandled. She described the midnight phone call. She said Rafael Moreira's name out loud, in public, for the first time. She said, "I would not be standing here without him, and I waited too long to say it." The room was quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something true has been said inside them. Somewhere in that city, in a hospital car park, in the rain, 11 days before a notebook arrived, a woman had sat in a car with a glass trophy in the back seat and chosen not to walk through sets of doors. What she could not have known, sitting there, was that the doors were not locked, that walking through them would not have cost her the story she had built. It would have completed it. The whole story, not the official one, the true one. Most people have a name somewhere in the back of their life that the public version leaves out. A person who answered when they didn't have to. A favor that was never repaid in words. Some of those people are still reachable. Some are not. Whoever is watching this and knows which category their person is in, this story has already done what it came to do. There is an old idea, older than business, older than ambition, that the person who considers others worthy of acknowledgement is not made smaller by that act. They are made more whole. This is God's hand. Stories where every story has a hand behind it you didn't see until the very end.